This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Risk coming for ranchers in the Great Plains as a snowmaker develops over the Dakotas. Greg Solier will have that update in just a moment. Hello, folks. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. Mike Pearson here in the studio, along with Max Armstrong, who appears to be dressed for the weather today with that tie, Max.
Oh, I'm glad you noticed, sir. Yeah, it's not just an ordinary holiday tie. It's a snow tie.
It is, and a snow tie might be very relevant. Greg Solier, it sounds like this next week might see some action there on the forecast.
That's right. I tell you, you wanted a white Christmas, you got it big time. Watch this system here slow to move out of Colorado into the western Great Lakes region. A week's worth of snow for much of the Dakotas, upper Midwest, points on westward. Guess we're rolling out the B word, a blizzard. Monitor accordingly this one. It'll be a tough one on man and beast.
Well, these days ahead of the Christmas holiday are busy days for folks in the Farm Bureau organizations across the country. Several state Farm Bureau meetings are held. This past week, they held their meeting in the Illinois organization at the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago, and they unveiled a documentary about our resources and how farmers care for the land. And here's a farmer who was prominent in that entire documentary. We welcome to the broadcast Mike Ganschow, who is a farmer in central Illinois, near Walnut, Illinois. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, I guess technically, since we're north of I-80, we would be northern Illinois, but we're just in the northern, I guess, a little bit is the way I would describe it. So.
The documentary is an hour long. It's called Sustaining Our Future, and it's a farm family story. And it basically, while it centers on you, it covers a lot of conservation practices out on the land, including many on your farm.
Yeah, absolutely. That was our main goal, when this documentary was kind of brought to me is, there's a lot of good things that farmers are doing or implementing on their farms to combat the issue of nutrient loss, and we wanted to have the chance to feature that. So it's kind of a combination of a little bit of history of the conservation practices that we're doing on our own farm, and then mix again a lot of the other different practices that have come into play since we started implementing conservation practices on our farm back in the 80s. And I think it does a really good job of highlighting the important things that farmers are doing to address these issues that we're facing today.
I have often said it is the great untold story, what farmers have done over generations out there, and they don't get nearly enough credit for it. You don't get nearly enough credit. And this began on your farm, not just with you or your father, but your grandfather really got things rolling there, did he not?
Yeah, he's really the one that kind of, like I said in the documentary, set the tone in the operation for being able to see a problem and address it and take a chance at doing something different. And that's certainly what he did back in the late 70s and early 80s. I mean, when he was my age and even younger, I mean, every acre of every field was plowed when you were growing your crop moldboard plowed. And, to see the soil washing away from his farm was just too much to take. And he decided to try something different. So he implemented no-till farming practices, and I guess the rest is history. He did a good job of taking that chance and setting that tone for us.
Before it became fashionable. And many of us remember how bad that erosion, not just from water, but wind was in the wintertime, especially from the wind effect on that ground. There's a quote from your dad in that documentary. I believe it was something to the effect of, "The soil is the beginning of everything," something of that nature. Am I correct?
Yeah, like Andrew Margonet says in the documentary, it's the skin of the earth. All terrestrial life is grown from a very thin layer of soil, that topsoil. And that's right. It absolutely tops with that. It starts with that soil, and it starts in particular with topsoil. So when we lose that, we're losing the best soil that we have to grow crops for life on Earth.
And farmers have really made the difference with the variety of practices, not just no-till farming, as your grandfather moved into that area, but you have bioreactors, you have terraces out there. I think many of these things are not easily grasped by folks outside of agriculture, but the visual aspect of this documentary helps carry that story, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really shows that it takes a implementation of multiple different practices to really make a difference in addressing this issue of nutrient loss. And that's really what we wanted to convey in this, is that, it's not just for the public, but it's even for other farmers to realize that, implementing one practice is really good, but we need to think as as a multi-implementation approach to really make that difference in combating the issue that we have with nutrient loss.
Sustaining Our Future, a farm family story. Folks, I want you to watch it. Go to YouTube, Google it, Sustaining Our Future. Watch it all the way to the end. Michael Ganshow, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Max. I appreciated it.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. Now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. Brian, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Mike, for having me.
I want to talk first about the energy market. We've seen crude oil back off quite a bit from its summertime highs. Brian, does that tell you that further declines are coming?
Well, so we're about 45% off of the early year peak in crude oil. We've had, I believe, about a 60-cent break in RBOB values, which would be your unleaded gasoline, in about the last month, close to $1 in heating oil, which would be your diesel fuel proxy. So that is a concern, especially as it relates to corn for ethanol, right? I think there's going to be some very good long-term support in crude oil around the $60 a barrel area. So one of the things going on right now is to talk about the price cap. And I think the general thought is that that could help support energy values. But we've got economic concerns as well, and I think with Saudi Arabia reducing production, they're concerned about demand moving forward. So these are the things that we're going to be watching early in 2023, and I think the general global economy is going to have a big hand in energy values moving forward.
Brian, you mentioned the weakness in crude oil could spill over into the ethanol market. We saw that whole industry just catch fire last year as consumers were out there looking for biofuels. Big print on production this past week. Can it be sustained?
Right, so big print this week, not a good print last week. I think the support from the general overall energy market is a concern for ethanol, and it does not take a lot to move the balance sheet on the corn for ethanol side. So 1% in corn for ethanol reduction is about 50 million bushels. So then you look at that and you couple that with the concerns on exports, and we've got a little bit of a demand concern moving forward.
We do, and those exports have been a concern for some time. Brian, the U.S. dollar has been surprisingly strong recently. Do you expect that strength in the currency to continue?
I do. I think there's a lot of countries and entities caught short U.S. dollars. I read a figure recently this week about 80 trillion. And so as we get into 2023, do we see another move where global entities are caught short and there's another run on the U.S. dollar? And I think that's a possibility.
USDA, of course, trying to categorize that export number. And I'm wondering, as you look out into 2024, is the strength in the dollar going to really drive export values and totals as we get through this next year?
Well, did it do any major damage to exports this year? We had a very big rally in the dollar. Commodity values were going up as the dollar was going up. So what was it? Was it the dollar hurting the export capabilities of the U.S., or is it just prices going higher in general? High prices tend to cure high prices, and I think that we're seeing that. And it's not just the board price, but you think about the cash market prices that we're seeing, especially in the Western Belt. I think that's doing its job to temper domestic demand as well.
You mentioned those strong cash prices, and Brian, basis has been on fire in that Western Belt. Is it starting to moderate at all? Have you heard?
We are starting to hear a little bit of general moderation from what we saw in fall, but seasonally we are starting to see a little bit of an uptick again in basis values. Generally, you would see some good basis opportunity in the first couple of weeks of December, and we are starting to see some incremental increases in basis values in both corn and soybeans.
Brian, generally speaking, as you look at the market structure today, ahead of the end of the year, is there anything you think growers need to be doing here before the calendar flips to 23?
Well, one of the things that we've really been adamant about is looking at new crop values, especially if you look at what's happened with soybeans recently, led by some dryness in Argentina, meal values taking off. We're using that as an opportunity to take advantage of new crop soybeans, at least buying some puts, if not doing some HTAs there. And earlier in the year, we were really aggressive, getting at least half of APH bushels covered on corn production for next year.
All right, we're going to come back and talk about that soybean market because there are some interesting trends developing there. We'll have more with Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're back talking markets with Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. And Brian, before we went to break, you mentioned the interesting developments that are taking place in the soybean market. Let's start with South America. Argentina, still pretty dry.
Argentina is dry. They do have some rain in the forecast, so I think the big thing is do they get the rain, number one, and does it fall where it needs to fall to improve the crop? The big thing that we've seen this week in Argentina accounts for about 40% of global meal exports. So we have seen the meal market go from just around $400 a ton to up to about $460 a ton. It's a very sharp move in a very short period of time, and that has also helped support the soybean values themselves. Now, soybeans have been in a big picture trading range. We're back up to the upper end of that trading range, so we have advocated for producers to, again, sprinkle in some more old crop sales, and like we mentioned in the last segment, start to really look at new crop production. And if you look at some of the revenue levels here, new crop soybeans actually pencil better than corn in some areas because of the rally in beans and the break that we've had in corn recently.
Brian, I'm curious, as you look at that situation down in South America, Argentina in a drought, Brazil still expecting a record large crop. Is that what the trade is planning for?
The trade is planning for that. This week we'd had some privates actually increase their estimate of the Brazilian crop. You could maybe nitpick some of the areas in southern Brazil saying, oh, well, we've had 2 weeks of some dryness, but last year we were in month 4 of drought at this point. So it seems that at this stage we're pretty good at the idea of having 150 million ton crop, and that's a lot of beans. So my concern moving forward is into 2023, I think our export program for soybeans is going to really fall off hard, and that's going to be something that will likely weigh on values.
Now, as we think about that Brazilian soybean export regime, in years past, they've struggled with logistics, with getting things out at the ports, but they've been moving some big numbers. Brian, can Brazil handle this tonnage?
I think they can, and so there were some concerns after the election. Was that going to have any impact because of protests? And thus far it hasn't. And we actually had Brazil export a record amount of corn for the month of November. So I think logistically they are chugging along better than I think a lot thought that they could. And so now we're going to see investment from China has been there to make sure that they have the ability to get crop out of the country.
Headline news has been moving the wheat market all year long. Brian, where do we sit today from a fundamental perspective? What are you watching in wheat?
So global stocks still tight, but we've had a really large break recently. It's about a $2 break in soft red values over the last 2 months. We've had hard red come down and within about 10 cents of the August lows. And I think a lot of that recently has been just the increase in the expectation of the Russian crop. If they realize the current estimate of exports for their crop, that's going to be the second largest export from one country in history, just second to the U.S. back in the late 90s. So this is something where they have a lot of product to give to the world. And I think that short term we are oversold. I think we could retrace back up to some levels, maybe around $9 on hard red. But I think big picture, we've tracked 2008 very closely. And if we get hard red below $8, I think you got a really big problem on the charts.
All right, Brian, recent headlines, we've seen China reopening, maybe moving away from their COVID zero. Do you think this is going to benefit meat exports as you look out for the rest of this year?
Right, so Chinese meat imports and meat in general has been down about 23% year over year. So I think this is a question for a lot of commodities as China has not necessarily imported what they did over the last couple of years post-COVID. Is this pent-up demand or did they restock? And so I don't know the answer to that question because I think that's also important for corn. Prior to their COVID buying spree, they were only importing 1.5 million, 2 million tons a year. Then we saw that really ramp up. And a lot of our demand estimates for corn for export are still thinking China is going to take a lot of corn. Do they? I don't know.
Lots remain yet to be seen here as we watch how this world reopens after COVID and everything else that's going on. Brian Splitt, agmarket.net. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you, Mike.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. Combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
During the busy meeting schedule, we were able to catch this guy between his personal appearances. I think he's in Indianapolis, Indiana, at a farm show in the week ahead. But Chad Colby has holiday gift ideas. What are you going to give me this year, pal?
Max, I might spend a little of your money. I'm sorry. It's one of our favorite tech segments is our holiday gift ideas. I've actually had several phone calls this last week. Chad, what about this for my husband? What should I do? So what we want to do is give you that short list. One of the things I really speak highly of is Apple's new AirPods. If you haven't seen them, they came out in the last 6 months. I'm actually using them now. Noise canceling. They work great in a tractor cab. Maybe walking around your hog building. They're outstanding. Come in a little case. Those are great. Farm toys are always good. I won't talk much about that. Drones. Oh my gosh, the guys at Flying Ag. I love this little drone. This is the Mini 3 Pro from them. This is as light as a can of Diet Coke and pulls out a great image if you're trying to do some basic scouting. Of course, they got a lot of other ones, Max, too, if you want to spend a little bit more money. One of the other things that we've been talking about for years is our friends at Octane Press. You can see these big books I've got sitting here next to me. If you haven't seen them, there's just nothing better. If you've been to a farm show over the last several years, you've seen Lee's work, and it is absolutely first class. And whether your passion is Caterpillar or John Deere or IndyCar racing or Max red tractors, there's truly nothing better. Another topic I've gotten a lot of questions about is, Chad, over the years, you've shown how you recondition farm equipment. And our friends at TNT Systems, I've got a couple of their products here on my desk, but I'm sure you've seen it. They've got a lot of great processes and equipment and hand tools you could use to maybe make that old tractor look amazing. And then I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you, Mac. One of my farmer friends last winter showed me his golf simulator. Are you ready for this? In their farm shop. Well, I added one of those to my basement. It's a pretty cool system. You got a device like this that actually meters the ball as you hit it into the net. It's outstanding. It's a great addition. But the biggest thing is, if you got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out at us. We'll be happy to help you.
And I might add, at Octane Press, Lee Cloncher's company that brings you those great tractor books, they have other stuff too there. They have calendars, they have videos, octanepress.com. Lee's such a great friend of ours and a supporter of our show, and I just wanted to give him an extra plug there.
Absolutely, Max.
We appreciate it, sir. Merry Christmas to you. We'll see you along the way somewhere.
You bet.
Chad Colby joining us each weekend with his segment and helping Santa just a little bit this weekend. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. So you want to buy a tractor, do you?
Almost always, Max Armstrong, but it's tough this time of year, as you've no doubt noticed. Supply chains have been stretched, and at NAFB, our friend Mike Adams had the chance to check in with Daryl Tice, the sales and marketing manager for Claas North America, and he asked about whether or not the supply chain situation is getting any better.
It's improving. I'd say I'd start there. It's improving. In the last 12 months, we've seen our fair share of challenges. I think the whole industry has. And it's interesting, before COVID, the supply chain and even the logistics thing was what we would call normal. Mm-hmm. And over the last years, we saw the ability to ship containers go from 4 weeks to 12 weeks. We're now back to 8 weeks. We saw the inability to get components to even make machines. Now we're able to make machines, although the lead times are long. But it is getting better. We're seeing it not only in our whole goods, our machines, our finished machines that we're selling, but also in our parts. So it is improving, it is getting better, but we'd also say we're only halfway through. We think we've got another 6 to 12 months of this, maybe before things would get back to normalizing to where we were before COVID came.
And parts is such a big key, right? I mean, farmers, when you're in that time crunch, you're using that equipment, you need those parts. So is that part improving as well?
The parts availability is improving. We've done a number of steps over the last 12 to 18 months to weather the storm, if you will. We've increased our inventory of parts in our warehouses here in North America. We're seeing that the consistency of parts replenishment is improving, which is allowing us to bring those inventory levels down. But the minute if things would turn around, we would certainly go back and increase inventories, just because we need to be able to count on our suppliers to be able to supply our customers, and making sure we have the necessary inventory is critical.
We've learned a lot of lessons coming through a pandemic, and some changes have been made. In your business, moving forward, looking ahead, what will change, you think, in how you handle issues like this?
One of the things that will probably never go back is lead times on ordering machinery. So today our dealers do have machines or the ability to sell machines to farmers that won't be delivered until next summer or next fall for the 2023 harvest. And the ability to change those machines now, even those machines might be 9 months from being delivered, is very limited, just because of the time it's taking to source these materials. And the good news is if a farmer and a dealer can get comfortable with that 12-month, 9-month lead time, it actually makes it more efficient for everybody. So that's one thing that probably won't go away. As we've learned, we need to plan further ahead. There's benefits all the way through the value chain, to the farmer, to the dealer, to the manufacturer, if we can implement that.
Thanks, Mike. And that was Daryl Tice from Kloss talking about the improvements in the supply chain industry, even if some of these changes might be here to stay. Farmers have also been figuring up the results from harvest of the 2022 crop, and Mike Adams also had the chance to check in with Andy Ackley of Golden Harvest.
We had a really good year this year. We're excited about so many things within our portfolio. Some of the older, standard products had a fantastic year. And we had a really significant investment in our breeding and testing program a few years ago, and we're seeing the payoff of that. A lot of our newer products performing extremely well, really across the market.
You always hope for good weather, but every year there are challenges. But you learn something in those challenging years, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of places in the country this year that were really good for weather and others that really suffered. And I think it's one of the things that we as producers think about is, what acres are our tougher acres or tend to be a little drier or tend to be a little wetter, and really matching up, our experience on those acres with products from Golden Harvest.
So when now they're planning for 2023 and making some of those decisions now, what are you talking with farmers about?
The biggest one is just making sure that we're getting our soil sampling done, understanding, what nutrients we may have leached, what nutrients may be limiting within our operations, and making sure that we're getting those soil samples taken and interpreted, and then making the proper corrections to your soils so that you have the nutrition out there to really provide for that crop next year.
That's an important point. Seed selection is obviously important, but agronomic management is very important too if you're going to get the most from that seed.
Absolutely. They go hand in hand. And I mean, it's hard to recommend a product when you don't understand what the nutrient value is on a specific farm. So having that information, learning from it, knowing what changes you need to make and what the environment a hybrid does well in really protects you and makes sure that you're going to have a great fall next year.
Because the goal is to maximize the potential of that seed they put in the ground.
Absolutely. If we're not doing that as a producer or as a provider, we're not doing our job.
What will be new in 2023 from Golden Harvest?
We've got a lot of new hybrids that we actually recently advanced that we're very excited about. But one of the new products from last year is an earlier product, 100-day corn GOOA 97, so a little bit more north, but performing extremely well. And it was just released last year, had a great year in plots, as well as a couple of our standards like G11 V76, had a phenomenal year in testing and on many acres across the U.S.
Thanks, Mike. That was Andy Ackley, corn product manager there at Golden Harvest Seeds. And Max, a lot of conversations about harvest this past year as folks figure up those results.
And many growers are happy to have it in the bin, especially as winter is really settling in. Coming up, Greg Solier takes a look at that forecast for the week ahead. It's not just wintry. It has blizzard conditions for the northern part of the country. Stay with us here. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. One of the things we like to highlight here, Max, is that next generation of ag leaders, and I'm always amazed at how many of them come through FFA.
Well, I was thinking about this a few days ago, right after the FFA convention, that there are many individuals such as ourselves and many corporations that support FFA, and for good reason. I talked about this the other day with Tammy Craig Schilling. She's the Vice President of Market Development for Bayer. She came up through the ranks of FFA. I said it must be important to you and must be important to Bayer also.
It is, and actually it's the reason I joined the organization, frankly. When I was down to making my final decision, I was looking for a company that I shared values with. And the company absolutely has a very long history of investing, not only financial contributions, but we invest time. We invest time by choice, by either hosting officers, hosting FFA organizations, different chapters, spending time at the conventions, both state and national, as well as different judging different contests and mentoring. We really enjoy that. And we also rally around the importance of ag education to really build communities, build leadership for that next generation. So it isn't just a financial contribution that we make, but it really is, I like to say we're all in contributing to the FFA.
So many of us have seen what FFA can do to young people, bring them along, certainly help them mature, prepare them for leadership in the future, which we so badly want to see, I think, many of us. What about other youth organizations, too? Are there others that are supported by Bayer?
Oh, absolutely. We are very active with 4-H. We are active with different organizations. So one that I have had the chance to engage with is Sigma Alpha. It's a female agriculture sorority at some universities across the U.S. And we do a lot within that STEM education space and supporting youth, because if you think about it, in that whole science, technology, engineering, math, that is at a root of agriculture. If you're a farmer, you're using math on a daily basis, whether it's figuring out rations for your livestock, or it's doing something in a greenhouse environment or in the field. And so we are very active in supporting these youth organizations, which is really fun. It's very energetic, and we have a chance to engage with some really talented young people that are going to continue to be leaders in our industry.
Is there some scholarship support also, Tammy?
Oh, absolutely. We have a couple programs. So we have one that the Bayer Fund provides, and it's the Grow Ag Leaders. And that scholarship program was started as part of an effort to really invest back into communities, invest into young people who wanted to be in agriculture. And it came out of the suggestion really started with a group of farm organizations who said, we'd love to see you invest even more in ag youth. And we started the program, and a whole lot of people back in the office are very active in making sure that word gets out. That scholarship application is open. We're in an open period, and it is Grow Ag Leaders. And you don't have to be from a farm. You just need to have an interest in agriculture and want a career in food and agriculture, and you can apply.
And is there a website, Tammy, where folks could go to apply?
Most definitely. You can go to www.fund.bayer.us. Or if you're like me, you can use your favorite search engine for Bayer Fund, FUND, and Grow Ag Leaders. And I suspect it will come up pretty high in your search engine search.
Tammy Craig Schilling, Vice President of Global Market Development for Bayer. She lives on a farm. She also serves on the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
When he gets excited, he gets excited. Mr. Solier was bouncing into the studio when he arrived a few minutes ago, just bouncing. There must be something big looming out there.
There is. I mean, on a positive sense. Now, I don't want to be labeled Mr. Gloom and Doom, although I think already that ship has sailed probably, I think. But, it's been rare in the past few years. We've seen this scale of moisture this early in the season of significance. Also translating southward from last weekend's storm into the mountains of California. Here is the bitter cold air. Gulf Coast, it's still toasty. That contrasted temperatures helps to fuel this big big diving, buckling jet stream pattern. This is the back end of the system that came through along coastal sections over the weekend. Note the bitter cold through Big Sky. The accumulating snow measured by the feet with time across the Dakotas heads up livestock managers. And again, the cold air on the move. By the late portion of the week, a little ridging up aloft, still cold, but quieter opportunities to dig out, getting underway across the Dakotas as that supercharged mid-season cold still holds across the Canadian prairie. And the southern extent of that cold air develops this large-scale upper air trough across the southwest too. The water equivalency now of the snowpack in the Sierra, 6 to 7 to 8 inches. It's about 25 to 30% of the normal. Not the way it's going to go the whole winter season, mind you, but an improvement here. Note the wind, the dust storm potential, and then the showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, that is, eastward. That is the middle parts of the weekend. By late in the week, still some upper air disturbance weather here across the central and southern plains. It's colder, a touch of snow, the sunshine, the cool breezes for the desert southwest are back into play out there late in the week.
In the Dakotas, you mentioned, when will that snow be done so that they can get in with the cleanup there?
That's a good question. I mean, it may take until the end part of the upcoming week to finally get things to wind on down, and there will be wind accompanied with this. 1, 2, 3 feet of snow, perhaps, and probably with additional snow already in the ground. Wouldn't be surprised, 3 to almost 4 feet, he says, on the ground. So again, probably.
Where are you talking about?
We're talking about the Dakotas here. Let's say from the Nebraska Panhandle back through Colorado. Yes, it'll be a blizzard as well. Up through the Black Hills, Grand Forks, Bismarck, Mandan, up to areas just west of the Arrowhead. So plan accordingly there. On the warmer side, we'll take you into that perspective. It'll be showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe, probably I-70 on southward. Still some wraparound wind and max with snow and perhaps some additional accumulations through the Canadian prairie and the Dakotas here, the middle to late parts of the week. Probably a 5 to 7 day storm to contend with out there. So again, keep an eye on that. Not to mention, again, the Arctic air through the Canadian prairie already. It's a snapshot, mind you, of what's coming this winter season for the plains and Corn Belt locales like we talked about last weekend on the Weather Outlook. Severe weather, southern sections of the plains, don't care if it's December. Showers and thunderstorms heading on east and some wind and dust across the desert southwest. The system finally heads into the Mississippi Valley, the middle to late parts of the week with widespread showers and thunderstorms, again, heavy and severe.
So there could be some stormy weather on to the east. Will there be lake effect snows then in those areas?
There will be, but there'll also be some system snow, obviously, to contend with into the western Great Lakes region, parts of the, obviously, the plain states of the western Corn Belt. But note the influx of milder air, some rain and snow through the upper Midwest, Great Lakes areas. And then we get into showers and thunderstorms, probably severe I-70 on southward, mid-Atlantic region, late parts of the week, organized rain and snow north of the St. Lawrence. And yeah, especially through this part of the upper Midwest, the upper Mississippi Valley. Late in the week, the winter storm potential gets cranking as windy, colder air cuts in underneath this weather system. Widespread moisture measured by the inch or two or more expected there. Quiet weather over the southeastern states early in the week. Late in the week, here come the showers and thunderstorms. Texas in through Bayou country and a spread to the north and northeast with a warm up and severe weather potential too.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
After the picture he painted a moment or so ago, I bet you want to see Greg's precipitation map for the next week. How much will there be?
For some, good, great news. Others, for the faint of heart, I think. Welcome to wintertime. You wanted drought relief. This is what you have to deal with. I guess it's okay, minus the severe aspect at an inch or two, maybe some outlier 3-inch totals throughout many areas of the Corn Belt, especially eastern and southern sections. Yeah, the Ohio is up. The Mississippi is going to be up. Now, you want moisture this time of the year. It comes down in the form of snow. Yeah, it's been 35 to 40 below zero here. Daytime highs of late low to mid 80s. That 100+ degree swing of temperatures get you this. About a week's worth of accumulating snow, melted down of varying consistencies. Moisture content, generally, it's an inch or two. It comes to probably anywhere between 10, 20, 25 inches of snow. You bet. Arrowhead in Minnesota or west from there. Much of the Dakotas, Black Hills, Nebraska Panhandle west along the divide and points on northward. Good news for the Pacific Northwest, valleys of California. Watch the severe stuff, and with time, the moisture moving into the eastern states, but not until late in the weekend.
Now, certainly this isn't going to be a drought breaker. 1 week won't turn things around that much, but At least it's a little bit of a start, isn't it?
Yeah, just like into California, we had a storm about a week ago. If we had one all week, we would be able to make significant inroads across the western states, drought-wise, the plains and points on southward. But it's a good point. But if we do get this setup like this, Max, where there's cold air, bitter cold here, warmth here, you tend to initially, as we move through the mid part of the month of December, there'll be some drying here, if you will, or at least a drier weather picture. But there's moisture here, back into the Ohio Valley, far eastern Corn Belt, and down across the south and southeastern part of the state. Mind you, December 21st, the start of winter time. That's at least through mid-December.
Well, at least what? The top third of the country should have a white Christmas, I would think.
That's right. Just takes 1 inch or more to qualify. St. Nick will be happy. The cold, maybe St. Nick will be a little happier as well post-holiday with the cold easing a bit. Warmth here, if you will, for wintertime over the southwestern part of the country. But see how we continue to get this dip, this buckle in the jet stream pattern. That means systems drop in from the Pacific Northwest. Energize here with the cold to the north, the warmth down south, and you get another round of significant moisture. Eastern states, Corn Belt, plain states into the Pacific Northwest. The snow is back into play.
Let us see how we start 23. Does the moisture keep on coming?
It keeps on coming, and the temperatures keep coming on down here. Again, it's just a mid-winter cold air mass, bitter cold air mass. It's entrenched here already. Already significant snows through the Canadian prairie, so hence the cold air just continues to warble around like this. Warmth over the southwest, Gulf Coast, southeastern states. The compaction of the isobars get you a stormy weather pattern. Good news with drought Pacific Northwest. Winter storms for much of the plains, the Corn Belt, into the Northeast and New England.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Well, some tractors are restored in tribute to someone, and some are restored to call attention to a cause. And that's the case with this tractor, this International, made in 1946. I'll tell you about it at Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You might want to put a bow around one of those, give one to someone you love. That would upgrade their shop immediately, and maybe give yourself a present. You can go online to get all of your questions answered, and then follow up with a call then if you care to do so. StoreLock.com is their website. Leland Crane is a farmer, and he's a seedsman there. Sells seed in the eastern part of Missouri, and he's 55 years old. He was restoring a tractor last year, right in the midst of the restoration of this WD-9, made by International in 1946. He went in to have his blood pressure checked, and after that, the nurse practitioner said, "Tell you what, why don't we check your PSA level?" Well, when they did that, they found that Leland's PSA was quite elevated, and he did have prostate cancer. Leland has restored this tractor to make sure that everyone knows about the need to get checked. He points out that it's the second leading cause of cancer deaths in men, prostate cancer. So Leland is going to be taking that tractor out there. There'll be a blue ribbon on it. He can call attention to the fact that he is a cancer survivor because he was tested and cancer was checked early. Leland's tractor there at Philadelphia, Missouri, a great International made in 1946. Let's see what Mark Stock is talking about this weekend, what they're selling at Big Iron.
Let's start December the 13th with Lowe Miller Farms retirement sale out of Brazil, Indiana. This sale features 32 items, a Challenger MT655B mechanical front tractor, a Super Sharp Freightliner FL80 grain truck. December 14th, folks, over 3,200 items will sell on BigIron.com. Jim Erickson is retiring from Platte, South Dakota. They're selling a John Deere 1890C air seeder. Kevin and Robin Elwood are retiring from Plainview, Nebraska. They've got a 2014 John Deere 8345R mechanical front tractor, 67 items altogether selling in Plainview. TDC Farm Partnership, Terry and Deb Kreitz, they are retiring from Kirk, Colorado. Late model, always been shedded equipment featuring a John Deere S770 combine, a John Deere 8370R tractor, a one-owner 2008 Kenworth W900 semi-truck tractor, and a John Deere 1770 Maximerge 12-row 30 planter. Unruh Hay Company out of Copeland, Kansas has 44 items, a 2020 John Deere W235 cell-propelled swather windrower, and a 2018 Stinger 6500 bale stacker. And December 15th, Marvin Manifold out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota will be selling a 1996 Volvo semi-truck tractor and a Gleaner S68 Super Series combine. The equipment is outstanding, and it all sells with no reserve on BigIron.com.
Now it's time to check in on that next generation of ag leaders by seeing who's coming up in FFA. And this week we're meeting Rachel Tunison. She's serving as the Iowa FFA State Reporter. And Rachel, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Tell us, what are the roles and responsibilities of the reporter in the state of Iowa?
So as a reporter, I am in charge of kind of documenting different FFA events. So that be by taking pictures, posting different things on social media. So really getting the word out there about events, and also featuring different members' stories and things that they're proud of on our social media platforms. Just because without our members, Iowa FFA just isn't what it is.
That's so true, and those member projects can be so special. Rachel, what were some of your events in FFA?
I was very passionate about LDEs, so I was very much the public speaker and conducted meetings. I really enjoyed competing just because it taught me something in the process, and it was just a great way to push myself as well as others to be better. So it was just a fun time all around.
And then you decided you wanted to be in leadership of FFA. And Rachel, what was the decision like to run for state reporter?
Oh, it was a big decision. I really wanted to be the best person for the position as I could be. So I took a lot of time to reflect on it and think of how can I benefit the members of FFA? How can I be that person to help them with what they need? And ultimately, I decided that my love for seeing others develop and reach their full potential is exactly what should be in a leadership position. So that was ultimately the deciding factor for me.
That is very cool. And Rachel, looking out long term, do you hope to stay in the ag industry?
Oh, absolutely. I am currently at South Dakota State University studying ag communications and minoring in public relations. So I really want to be that person that just connects consumer to industry and kind of bridges that gap.
Telling that story is so important in agriculture. Rachel, we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.
That's Rachel Tunison, Iowa State FFA reporter.
On Friday, the USDA released their December World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report. The December report typically doesn't move markets much, and this one was no exception. Small changes to ending stocks in the global supply movement, with both corn, wheat, and soy all coming down in total production. In the wheat market specifically, global production was down 2.1 million tons at 1,056 million. U.S. supply saw no changes in this report. However, the season average farm price did drop 10 cents to $9.10. In the corn market, global production was off 5.9 million metric tons this month, with U.S. exports being dropped 75 million on the strength of a strong U.S. dollar. The season average farm price came in at $6.70, also lower 10 from the month prior. In the soybean market, global production was dropped 1.2 million tons. U.S. supply, however, was unchanged, as was use. The season average farm price was also left the same at $14 even.
Yeah, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and it's almost time for our Christmas show on This Week in Agribusiness. I wanted to mention it because we're heading back to see those churches of Southeast Missouri, because they have so many of them with such a rich history that they open up for tours to the public every year, and it's just a magnificent opportunity. We go in and visit with some of the folks who know those congregations well and the lengthy history of those churches. So we look forward to sharing that Christmas weekend. That'll be Christmas Eve and Christmas Day here on This Week in Agribusiness. And then 1 week later, that'll be the start of that celebration of a century of Farmall, Farmall 100. As we'll be talking about the 100th anniversary that comes in 2023, that'll be New Year's weekend. We'll be visiting with some executives of Case IH and other individuals talking about their background with that legendary brand. We went to the Experience Center in Racine, Wisconsin, to share that visit. Again, coming up the first weekend, New Year's weekend, as we transition into 2023.
It's hard to believe, Max, that Farmall will have been around for 100 years in 2023. You've got a lot of good memories on those tractors, don't you?
Well, absolutely. Well, and maybe one or two not so great memories. You know, some long days, very hot days out there, but it made us the people we are. Then coming up in January, very soon of the new year, will be the Farm Futures Business Summit. We want to get that on your radar screen because we got the confirmation the other day. We'll be joined by businessman, farmer, and philanthropist Howard Buffett, our longtime friend who has the Howard G. Buffett Foundation, with which he has endeavored over many years to make a difference in the areas of food and conservation, the environment and nutrition. And most recently, he's been working in Ukraine. And Mike, that story is an amazing one. We had the chance to sit down with him, a few weeks ago and share that story. And he'll be in person at the Farm Futures Business Summit. And it'll be great to interact with him and answer some questions as well.
Absolutely. Hear about that life and his travels over to the Ukraine this year, Max, will be fascinating.
He's been over there 4 times since the war started.
Wow.
We hope you'll join us next weekend. We'll be taking attendance. We'll look for you right here on This Week in Agribusiness. Till then, we hope you have a great week, a safe week. Be careful of the storm. So long.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communication in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.